Gateways to Blue Skies competition and works out of NASA Langley Research Center. So we're all super glad to have you here. Thanks so much for joining. As a reminder, the session is being recorded, so there's no need to use AI or meeting notes for this. We will, as I said, record this session and we will post it on the website within a week or so, along with the chart decks and all the questions and answers that were provided during this call. As a reminder, please turn off your mics if you haven't already until it's time to take additional questions at the end of this call. If you need captions, you can access them by selecting More in the toolbar, then Language and Speech, and then turn on live captions. Alrighty, as far as our agenda goes, we're going to be giving an overview of the 2026 repair theme, giving some general technical remarks, some general programmatic remarks. We're going to go over all the questions we received in advance, and then additional questions we'll allow after we get through those questions we got ahead of time, and then we'll wrap up the meeting. And so before I turn it over to Stephen, I just wanted to provide the 2026 overview. And also this time we want to invite any teams to jot any questions down in the chat as Stephen is talking and giving the overview, and then we'll get to them at the end of this call. All right, Stephen?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right, hi. Welcome, everybody. Glad to have a good number of people here on the call. So thanks for tuning in. I know many people may be dealing with, different tests or other academic obligations. So it means a lot to us that you take the time out to be here for the Q&A. We look forward to reading your proposals. So our 2026 theme, as you probably already know, we're asking teams to conceptualize novel maintenance advancements that can be implemented by 2035 or sooner with the goal of improving efficiency, safety, and/or costs for the aviation maintenance industry. We want teams to consider high potential technologies and systems that are either not currently mainstream, might be brand new, or might maybe soon becoming mainstream, maybe up and coming technologies. And so we want students to look at not only what they think they might see up and coming, but something maybe that none of us saw as an option until you brought it up to us, right? So we're really looking forward to that. The industry, if you haven't already delved into the landscape part of your research, is an absolutely massive industry. It is really, really important. Obviously, our aviation industry couldn't go on without the aviation maintenance industry. So it's obviously paramount to the existence of the aviation industry, which itself is also a very big industry. So there's a lot of opportunity spaces to make improvements there. There's a lot of people out there in an industry, not saying that your teams go off necessarily and are going to start companies, but if you have a really good idea and are looking for something like that, there's a lot of opportunity spaces and a lot of people with a lot of money out there that might look favorably upon some of your ideas. So we can go to the next slide.
Ready?
So what are we looking for in the proposal? We emphasize in a number of spots that we want it to be aviation first, and that we want you to directly address these aircraft maintenance issues or opportunities that you're thinking about. So things that, we'll get to the exact don'ts later, right? But we want solutions that will equip the industry and dealing with those problems directly. There's a lot of ways to indirectly help aircraft maintenance, but we really want the students to tackle the problem head on. And so you might have a very specific idea, maybe a very, very technical idea, but since you are limited in how much you have to put on the pages that we give you, right? You only have 5 to 7 pages for your initial proposal, I believe. You will have to give, a little bit higher level of your system as a concept. And how you put that towards us, you will need to consider lots of other aspects of it, right? We want you to consider how the end user would use it, right? The timeline of how it would get from where the technology is now all the way up to that deployment to the end user. Right? Who is the end user? What are their needs? Um, what kind of issues are they dealing with, right? We've seen some questions, and I'm sure you'll see them soon, but right, different end users have different amounts of money, right? So some solutions might be more feasible to some parts of the industry than others. Um, and we want people to be very decisive in what they pick. Every year, we will see some proposals that we're not really sure what the technology that we're proposing is, and they kind of leave a few options in the paper, kind of like they want us to pick it. We really want the teams to pick what what your solution is, and tell us about that solution. So we're looking forward to see how those solutions close any opportunity spaces or any gaps there might be in the existing industry. Go to the next slide. So a couple things we don't want to see: concepts focusing on business aviation, military aviation, general aviation. Um, we really want everyone to look at the commercial side of the industry, since it is not only the part that you all interact with the most, but uh, the part of the industry that the country interacts with the most, is financially the largest part of the industry, and all of those other things that we necessarily don't want to see in your concepts will benefit from improvements to the the general commercial side of aviation, right? Improvements to commercial aviation will trickle down to all of the other aspects if they are very viable and beneficial in whichever way you're trying to make it. So what do we look for in the videos? The videos are very short. I mean, what we consider very short. It's only 2 minutes. And I know you all have a lot of things that you want to put in those papers, right? So I encourage everyone to go look at the video expectations in the guidelines. I'm going to kind of verbally go over a lot of those pieces right here. In those 2 minutes, we want you to introduce your team, the concept, kind of your value proposition, highlight what makes your concept unique, how it's addressing the problem that you identified or the opportunity space. And we want to see you use, some graphics, some animations, some creative elements, and we're not expecting movie quality. We've seen people hand draw stuff and animate it with PowerPoint, whatever you need to do with the tools that you have available. It is not generative AI. That's another slide we'll get to. But we really want to see your creativity in those 2 minutes, right? It's kind of almost like a mini introduction and elevator pitch. So you have more time than a 60-second elevator pitch, but not as much time as you'll have if you make it to the finals to present your information to us. So, you want to introduce your vision for the concept, what's the problem you're solving, the scale of the problem, what makes your part unique, and how you're going to, get it to implementation. So that's a lot to put in 2 minutes, but do your best kind of in that elevator pitch way to kind of let us know what your concept is in those videos. A couple of things that we have students look out for. While some students might use things like PowerPoint or other tools to make their video, we do not want a PowerPoint presentation as your video. We also see a lot of students, like I said, putting a lot of information in those 2 minutes. And if you find, in order to squeeze that information in, that you're speeding up the audio or talking maybe as quick or even near as quick as some sort of auctioneer, we want you to slow it down, maybe consider all of the information you're putting in there and fit in what you can at an appropriate audible pace, right? Like we said, don't use AI generated content, AI generated voices, and definitely be careful not to use any copyrighted images or music as well. You should not be using the NASA meatball or the NASA worm logos in your videos, but that doesn't stop you from making up your own logos for your teams, but that is not a requirement. I see lots of teams just like to do those things. And I think that's it for the video. Go on to the next slide. So a little bit more on the AI end, and you'll see there is a section, a couple of small, maybe a couple lines in there in the guidelines about the use of AI, and I'm quoting those here, right? we do not allow any portion of the submissions for the proposals to be created by non-team members, which includes, not only like you should not be hiring people to do this, any aspect of it, and that also includes things like generative AI, which we obviously see increasingly amount right in the world around us, but also teams trying to use those in their submissions. So if we spot any, which we shouldn't, and hopefully don't, those teams could be, to kind of disqualified or not considered when they submit their proposal. Some teams might, use it in a way that, they've already written their proposal. They say, I need to word this better. Maybe I'm going to, clean up the language, and they use it for that. Maybe that's fine. But like we don't generate imagery or charts, etc. Right? So I have a few little squares here. The reds are big no-nos. Oranges, be careful. Green is go ahead, right? And so a lot of teams are trying to incorporate AI-related technologies into their concepts. That's fine. Some people might use AI to look for new sources of information, right? Maybe they're saying, hey, I can't find information on this. Maybe where's a good space. Maybe AI can be used for that. We've seen some students try to use that before. Just be careful about where that information is pulled from. If you find any sources through something like that, definitely do a double, triple check on the validity of any information or sources it might be pulling. But definitely don't use it to write your proposal. Don't use it to make images or charts. And also don't use it to make the video submission. If you have any questions about the use of AI in your, throughout any of this, definitely send us an email. We're happy to make any clarifications needed. So also, while it is okay to incorporate AI technologies into your concept, we did see a lot of hand waving in the use of AI last year, right? People said, we're going to use AI in this way and that way to solve our problems or find what's wrong on these things, but they don't really go into it, right? They kind of just say, they put it in a black box of AI magic and just say it's going to solve their problems. So we don't want to see that. If you use AI, you really need to make sure that you can tell us through the paper, or definitely if you make it to the finals, in your presentation, is this something I need to be using to get the results that I am going for? If you are, is it actually AI that you're trying to use, or is it something similar to AI? And if you are actually going to use it, you might need to provide some additional technical details, right, on how you're going to make that happen with all the complexities that it takes to make an AI model or system work, which can definitely eat into some of that valuable page space. So definitely take those things into consideration. I think that's enough on this slide.
All right. Thanks, Stephen. All great information for our teams there. All right, I'm going to go into some programmatic remarks. These are just a few things for teams to keep in mind as you work towards your proposal writing and your video making. The competition guidelines, those are so important. The most important document in this competition. They will guide what you submit, how you submit it, and how it's judged. They outline exactly what is expected in the competition, and we encourage you to make sure you align your work to the guidelines. Occasionally, there will be updates to this document, but they will be logged in the change log on the first page of the guidelines that are posted online. For any significant changes which are not anticipated, teams will receive notification. Let's see, you will need to submit some additional items with your proposal and your video. You'll be required to upload several additional documents when you submit your proposal. One of those is a W-9 for your university. This must be completed by your Office of Sponsored Programs, your finance department, or a similar entity. And if you have questions about that, that's something you can always reach out to us and ask us. But those are typically the departments that handle the W-9. Your university receives finalist prizes directly, and then your advisor handles it on behalf of the team and the university according to your respective university protocols. So we cannot send prizes to individuals or clubs. They go to the university, which is why that W-9 form is so important. The next form is the faculty attestation form. So advisors must complete the advisor attestation form for the proposal submission to be valid. This indicates that they reviewed and approved the proposal and that they are also agreeing to the participation agreement on behalf of the team. The participation agreement is new this year. This can be found on the competition website, and it's also linked in the advisor attestation form. This form should be reviewed by all team members as there are new eligibility guidelines outlined within the agreement. By signing the attestation form, the team's advisor is signing the participation agreement on behalf of the team. So individual team members will not need to sign the participation agreement. You'll just need to review it. And then your advisor's signature on the attestation form covers that participation agreement. Next, we want you to give you some advice and think of your proposal like a Shark Tank sales pitch. You are selling your concept to the judges. The maturation of your concept should be at the convincing level. So include enough information to convince the judges that your proposed concept is credible and valuable, and that you provided good justification for your choices. And finalists will be selected from the proposal pool. Upon selection, teams will enter a new scoring period, which will begin with final paper infographic and end with a presentation at the forum. And then here you'll see on the right-hand side of this chart is our dates and deadlines upcoming. The next deadline is February 16th, and that is for your proposal and your video. Should you have any questions between now and then, feel free to email us at blueskies@nianet.org or attend the next Q&A session, which is slated for January 27th. And you can learn more on the FAQs page of the competition website. We have a lot of frequently asked questions posted on that page. And then again, that is where also the transcription and the charts and the recording from today's session will be posted. And all teams are invited to this open call format event on January 27th. That Q&A session, we won't be taking questions in advance. It'll just be, again, an open call question and answer session. And then finalist selections will be made by March 13th. And finalists will have the next few months to complete a final paper, the infographic, and develop a presentation. And this year, the GBS Forum will be held at NASA Langley Research Center in Hampton, Virginia in May. All right, now we'll go ahead and dive into the technical questions we received in advance. Stephen, I'll ask the question and then you can provide the answer as well as any other additional details you feel might be useful. So first question, is the goal of our proposal to improve safety, cost, and efficiency, or is it okay for a proposal to focus on one of the three areas exclusively?
So you can definitely have your concept focused exclusively on improving safety, cost, or efficiency. The competition wants you to make sure that it can be implemented by 2035 or sooner. And so you can just do one of them. However, you should consider that there's a lot of different factors in justifying the viability of your concept. So if, like, let's say you take an aviation maintenance process and you're making it more efficient, maybe you save a week off of a 2-week process and it uses 2 out of 4 people. If it takes 4 times more money to do it, maybe it's not going to be viable. So while you might only have the goal of improving safety or cost or efficiency, you should think about all of those things when making an overall justifiable concept and business case.
All right. Are there any budget or resource limitations regarding the tools, materials, or systems that teams may use or develop for the proposed solution?
So while we don't impose restriction on budget or resources, it's important for you to consider realistic costs for the target end user and the economic viability for the proposed concept. Now, I'm also sorry, I did write this answer ahead of time, but I'm thinking of a second interpretation. Um, so I guess I was the person answering this, wasn't sure if it was talking about, right, if we're coming up with a concept, let's say for an airliner, should we just assume the airliner has an unlimited budget? That kind of was where we were going for with the answer. Now, if you mean how much money can your team use, that might be a different answer. So if that's what you meant, you might want to re-clarify with us that question in the future. But typically when you're talking about the end user, yeah, we don't have specific numbers for you to go by, but you might find some in your research about, how much money people have to spend on certain systems that you might be researching.
Okay, thanks. Next question. Are there specific topics or things that are more likely to be advanced to phase 2 over other topics?
No, if we did have specific topics in mind that we wanted to go to phase 2, we would give you those ahead of time and tell you focus on these topics. We do give example items in the guidelines and the theme description, but we want students to definitely consider anything and everything that fits into the theme that we're giving. So we consider them all equally. It really ends up coming down to how well the teams do their research and justify their concept and can convincingly show that to us in their papers.
Great. Are there specific technical requirements or focus areas we must address in our proposal? For example, detecting or repairing fatigue cracks in aircraft fuselages.
There is not. So like we said in the last one, we really want teams to consider everything and everything that fits into the theme topic. Just to make sure that you're going through the required proposal elements and phase 1 evaluation criteria sections of the guidelines to make sure you can check the boxes on all the types of things that we're asking for. I will throw in a little bit of a caveat there. While there isn't specific technical requirements or areas, the more unique the area or the concept you're giving us is, the more likely it will stand out amongst the proposals, right? So if you have 15 groups and they're all doing the same specific technical area, or they all have concepts that look similar, then it might be harder for that team to advance over a team that might have just made, their proposal a little bit better and are pretty similar in what they're trying to propose.
All right. We understand the scope of the competition is limited to commercial cargo aviation. Is it okay for us to consider solutions that would help the military/general aviation side along with commercial, or would this dilute the strength of a proposal?
Yeah, so we mentioned a little bit of this earlier in one of our slides, but a lot of advancements that are going to be made to the commercial sector will end up benefiting other areas of the aviation industry, right? Military, general aviation, et cetera. And you can mention some of that extensibility in your paper if you want to use your page space on it. But obviously, you don't want to take up too much of your page space talking about how your innovation in the commercial space is going to do this, that, and the other thing in those other areas of aviation, since you are so limited.
What is the level of technical and/or implementation detail for how our idea could be used by 2035?
So this is always kind of a balance game with every group, right? You are only limited in the amount of space for your proposal, right? Page space, like we've been talking about. So it's important to kind of find the balance between that high level view of your concept and its path to deployment and those technical nitty gritty details that justify that your technology or concept is, has merit on the technical level.
Right. Are there any time constraints teams should consider for detecting or repairing fatigue cracks during ground-based maintenance, such as a maximum inspection or turnaround times between flights?
So while the competition doesn't put any constraints like that on your teams, we encourage you to do your research, reach out to people in industry, right? Potential end users, because I'm sure there are, standard practices, time limits, et cetera, in industry that exist, right? Maybe if the turnaround time is too long, it costs too much and the plane can't get back into service and that causes delays. So those are things that we expect the students to, and all of your teams to look into, right? How is it done in industry? How is this going to affect what is currently done? Hopefully in a good way, right? So it's not unlimited money and unlimited time out there in the business world.
Are there specific engine failure modes or maintenance pain points that NASA and industry partners see as especially urgent that would be high value targets for student teams? And how do we go about getting the statistics that go with these failure modes?
So again, like we don't have any specific, engine failure modes or maintenance pain points that we are trying to get you to do. Um, we encourage you to reach out to industry to get a better understanding of what's going on, right? Some of the opportunities or challenges they might be dealing with that you can innovate on. Um, and so we really want to see, out of the box ideas, right? If we gave a list of 10 or 20 things we wanted to see, a lot of the proposals will be very similar. And so we really want everyone to think outside of the box.
How much data, evidence, proof, scientific papers supporting our idea is necessary in the proposal? For example, do we need hard data supporting our idea's plausibility, or are speculative thoughts with some data enough?
So, I mean, solid data is always nice. You're not always going to have that, especially, the lower TRL your technology is, or the less popular something is in the industry or being used in the way that you're looking for. So a lot of that depends, right, on, what technology you're using, how far is it along in its development, or how it's currently used. But the more you can find, information-wise to back your concept, it's going to help justify your concept to the judges who are looking at your paper.
How deeply should we address certification and regulatory considerations? For example, FAA approval of new inspection methods or digital tools. And are there any standard assumptions you recommend teams use rather than diving into full regulatory analysis?
So, well, we don't want your papers to be all regulatory analysis, but we do hope to have some FAA people on the judging panel. So, if we have judges who are very familiar with regulation or how things work, certification, et cetera, and they see a paper that just completely ignores it, it's going to get very low scores. We've seen that types of things before, right? The industry judges and the subject matter experts know a lot about what their area is. So they definitely want to see people considering it, because your idea, if you want it to be implementable, will have to consider, those kind of red tapes and guidelines that the real world does have.
Does our proposal idea have to be environmentally conscious, or can it be dismissive of the environmental effects without penalization?
So concepts that are detrimental to the environment might not be viewed favorably. There are lots of laws and regulations, especially in aviation, about um, these sorts of things. So, part of your analyses might include, you're right, maybe part of your maintenance is making one of those things better. Maybe you just put it in as a consideration so that people know it's okay, right? A lot of times with new processes or technologies or materials, whatever it is, people ask about these sort of things, right? So if you're pitching to this airline company or whoever it is, theoretically, they're going to want to know what they're going to have to deal with, which these things are often part of. So definitely consider all of those social, economic, environmental factors as part of your proposal.
Absolutely. Thanks, Stephen. That was it for our technical questions received in advance. We're going to move now towards our programmatic questions we received in advance. And then I'll read these questions, and then Stacy's going to provide the answers for this part. What citation would you prefer, and is the works cited page included in the overall page count?
We do not have a specific citation format that everyone needs to follow. You get to pick an appropriate citation format and then just make sure that you apply it consistently throughout all of your references. So with that, we'd also like just to remind everyone that references are not to be put in the body of your proposal. We would like all of the references to be added to the appendices. And the appendices do not count towards your overall page limitation. So that's a great place to load them up right there. And we also really wanted to point out that we have very detailed proposal formatting guidelines in the competition guidelines document right there on page 10, which included the answer to this question. So, and there's some other questions that we got that the answers can be found in the guidelines too. So just make sure that you're taking really careful, thorough review of looking through those guidelines. I know we said that a couple of times throughout the call today, but that's one of the things that we really want everyone to be super clear about.
For the first round of the competition, is a working model or physical prototype of our team necessary?
No, not at all. In fact, prototypes are not expected for any phase of this competition.
All right. Will the judges be chosen based on the topic of the finalist?
Not quite, because we actually choose those judges before we ever even receive the proposals, because they are the ones who are evaluating your proposal. And there are several factors that influence the selection of those judges, including their expertise directly related to the theme, as well as their expertise related to the types of concepts we received in your NOI summaries.
Are we allowed to switch our advisors during the course of this competition, say if other work obligations arise?
Absolutely. We know things come up. There's always some unexpected events, and that has happened in the past. So we just ask that you would keep Amy and I apprised of any changes, especially to the student team lead and the advisor, who are our primary folks that we communicate with. Just shoot us a little email there at the Blue Skies email address and let us know of the change. Not a big deal at all. But we also do want to remind everyone that the primary advisor needs to be a U.S. citizen or a legal permanent resident.
Alrighty. Can we speak to people about technical areas who have worked on similar projects or in the field of interest, or do we have to only do independent research?
Yeah, I think Stephen mentioned a couple of times as he was talking and responding to some of the other questions that we actually really encourage everybody to connect with industry professionals. That just really helps you to get that realistic understanding of their real world needs and or opportunities. So you can see there on that second bullet, we actually have a statement directly in the competition guidelines document where we encourage folks to really reach out to those non-governmental industry folks so that you can just get that better grasp on how your concept can make a real impact on the work that they're doing.
I see Stephen has his hand up.
Yep, just emphasizing the non-government stakeholders part of that statement, right? Please do not reach out to the NASA or FAA folks or previous judges or potential judges if once we announce them about this year's competition, unless it's questions for the NIA team.
Yeah, that's actually a good point, Stephen. Thank you. All questions should come in through that Blue Skies email account, and then the NIA team will be filtering them to the direct, to the appropriate technical contacts to get those answers. The judges will be instructed that they're not actually allowed to interact or talk with any of the team members before we get to the forum, because that would create a conflict of interest or give a team an advantage over somebody else. So we want to make sure there's an even playing field and that everybody has access to all of the same information that they're getting from us, which means that anytime that you send us a question to that Blue Skies email address and we answer it, we will then also post it onto the FAQs. So you'll get a direct email back, but we'll also post it on the FAQs. That way everybody will know the answers to those questions and have access to that same information. That's really important to us.
Can NASA provide us with data or information on our topic that is not publicly available if we request it? And if so, who would we contact? specific email, etc., in order to request that information?
The answer to this question is no. Neither NASA nor NIA will be providing any additional information to teams that isn't publicly available. But the expectation is that all teams really should be able to submit successful proposals for the Blue Skies competition based on the information that is available to you publicly. And a great place to start is using NASA's Technical Reports Server, or NTRS. It's a search engine that you can use to find lots and lots of papers, videos, URLs, just a lot of good info on there.
How will proposed solutions be evaluated? Are there specific criteria or performance metrics that NASA reviewers will prioritize? For example, innovation, feasibility, environmental impact, scalability.
So Stephen addressed this question again earlier when he was talking, but just a quick answer. And Stephen, if you want to pop on top of anything I have to say, feel free. But we're looking for a balance of innovation and feasibility. And you can see there the guidelines. We have a statement indicating that we're really seeking innovative concepts with evaluation weighted towards sound technical analysis and justification of the proposed concept according to the theme description. So we really actually encourage teams to take a peek at the proposal scoring matrix, read over it thoroughly before you start working on your proposal, because you'll be able to see what the point value is for each of the different evaluation criteria that the judges will be using to score your proposals. And you can see which ones are weighted heavier. You know, there's some areas that do carry a little bit more weight. So check out that proposal scoring matrix and become very familiar with it. Stephen, was there anything that you wanted to add to that?
Not on this part, no.
Okay.
All right, thanks, Stacy. Appreciate that. So thanks to everybody who submitted a question in advance. Looks like we've got plenty of time to open this up for additional questions. If you have remaining questions or clarifications from ones we've just reviewed, please feel free to ask them now. The floor is open to any new questions you may have as well. To ask a question, you can select the raise hand button to be called on to ask your question verbally. Once called on, you can turn on your camera and unmute your mic and pose your question. Alternatively, you may type your question into the chat and we'll pull from there as well.
It looks like Aiden, you've got your hand up. If you're not able to unmute yourself, I think I can make you a presenter and you should be able to chat. Let's try that. Aiden, go ahead if you can unmute your mic. It looks like he dropped the question into the chat. He wanted to know if he could have contact information for the FAA.
So I think it looks like he's just asking if they can contact the FAA for information. I would say generally we don't want to bother the FAA too much. Obviously, the FAA might have general emails that people can reach out to if they have general questions about existing regulation, etc. Maybe some parts of the regulations aren't clear or hard to understand online. That might be okay. But we don't necessarily want teams reaching out to the FAA asking, what FAA, what do you want to see? All right. We encourage teams to reach out to those non-government entities for that type of information.
Thank you. That's a great answer. Hugo, it looks like you are up next. Are you able to unmute your mic at this point?
Yes, hello. I just wanted to ask for clarification on the proof of concept and or example. So you said that having a proof is good to put weight into the proposal, but also that no prototypes would give more points. So can you clarify a bit the limit between those two?
I'm not sure if I understood the question. Can you either repeat it or type it in the chat?
Sure. So you said that in order to sell our proposal better, it would be good to have a better technical background and proof if possible. But you also said that having a prototype was not expected and will not yield any advantage. Where do you put the limit between having a proof or technical background and prototyping to not lose too much time?
So that is a good question, right? So we remember that a lot of this conceptual proposal is at the high, right, level, right? It is not a conference paper, right? We really want the students to look at it from that high view and consider a lot of different aspects, right? So maybe if you're going for a specific type of technology, there's research out there saying that this type of technology works. Maybe it is applicable to certain areas. Maybe you're showing that those areas are similar to areas of challenge in the aviation maintenance area, or maybe it's already used in an analogous industry, right? Maybe it's used in automotive or something that might also work in some sort of way on aviation. So there's a lot of information out there, right? We're not expecting the students to go out and do hands-on research projects for these. Granted, there's always some students out there that might be doing things like senior design that are required to have some sort of prototype for their system. But like I said in the chat, right, you don't get extra points for having a prototype. So I'm not sure if that answers your question.
Yes, it does. Thanks.
One thing I want to mention, just because I forgot to mention it earlier before we call on the next question, something I was going to mention during one of the earlier slides is we just wanted to caution some of the teams from taking what we call the kitchen sink approach in tackling their problems. Sometimes there's a lot of cool technology out there and a lot of stuff going on in the industry. And a lot of students really want to stuff all of the technology, all of the things into their just grand scope of a solution, which make it really hard in a limited page space to really dive into the details you need to convince people that it's going to work and that it's feasible. So just be careful of trying to stuff too many things or not selecting a specific solution. So looks like the next hand up is Raymond. Stacy, go ahead.
Raymond, you can unmute your mic.
Hi. My name is actually Tyler, but several of us in here. One of the questions that I had was, this theme is specifically for commercial aviation, but that's not limited to just jetliners, right? Commercial airline companies, giant jets and stuff like that. Is it all right if we incorporate smaller aircraft or like piston-driven aircraft?
So, I mean, if that is part of I would definitely look. There is a little bit more detail online as what is considered part of the commercial aviation industry. But if it's not general aviation, if it's not private planes, like there are some smaller aircraft out there that might not be turbine driven, right, in the commercial aviation industry. So if that's something you're really trying to go for, it could be viable. You just want to make sure that you do a good job in the paper kind of justifying, hey, this is the level of impact that we see this solution having, right? So, I mean, if there's a specific kind of plane out there the commercial aviation industry uses, but there's maybe like a dozen of them, it really might minimize the impact of what your solution is going to be.
Okay. Thank you for that, Stephen. It looks like, Sarah, we see your hand up, but I'm going to go to the question in the chat first, and we'll come right back to you. Todd asks, should the scope of our paper focus on just the commercial aviation industry within the United States, or will additional points be given to proposals that consider the global impact of our proposed solution?
No, I don't. I was actually scanning the guidelines because I saw this question. I don't think we mentioned a specific place. Like many of our other competitions, you are kind of able to select the kind of that level of the scope, right? Maybe you choose the global market, maybe you choose US. I might advise you about, again, specifically choosing just a singular other country. Might not look very good. But we do often, want people to consider kind of the larger part of the industry, especially when doing your landscape analysis, right? So maybe there's technology that is, up and coming, but maybe it's not up and coming here. It doesn't mean that we can't adopt it here in the States and use it in any way that we want to solve these problems, right? So you can include the global level, but it's not going to necessarily get you extra points, right? You might do well in your landscape analysis if that's the angle you're going for.
That's what I was going to mention too. The point values are set in stone based on that scoring matrix, and so that was what the concepts will be evaluated on. All right, Sarah, you should be able to unmute yourself and ask your question. Oh, and it looks like it came through in the chat. Sarah asks, are we able to see past proposals or sample proposals to get an idea? And actually, I will answer that question for you, Sarah. We don't share previous proposals because those are considered proprietary. However, we do have all of the final technical papers, which are basically an expansion of the proposals for all of the finalists that we've had for the past year. So if you go to the challenge website and you look up the competition record, we've got that by year, and each of the technical papers for each of those finalist teams are posted there for you to take a peek at and see kind of what the scope of the work looks like for those teams that made it that far. And that has been really helpful for previous teams to look at some of those archives. All right. Do we have any other questions? Oh, it looks like Raymond has another one. Or I guess Tyler or whoever is in the room. Go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
Yes, I'm curious if the project's educational based for A&P mechanics that introduces a new technology, would that be acceptable to submit?
So I know we received a few educational based proposals. We are looking a little bit more for kind of direct, tackling the technical problems directly, kind of solutions. I know some of the educational opportunities out there do implement technologies, and there are companies out there doing that. And there are, teams might consider that type of thing as part of a larger part of their concept, right? Maybe they're putting in a new technology, and part of the training for that new technology is some sort of other new technology and has some sort of education component to make sure that their implementation is successful. But this competition isn't specifically targeting, changing the education project, changing the education process, or modifying that existing training system.
Okay, thank you.
All right, are there any other questions? Using the raise your hand function or dropping that question in the chat. While we wait just a second to see if anybody's dropping anything in the chat, Amy, would you like to provide some of the wrap-up comments?
Sure. Really, we just want to thank you all for attending our first Q&A for the 2026 GBS competition. We hope you found this call informative and that you're leaving better prepared to submit a proposal. And as I mentioned earlier, a recording of this session will be posted on the FAQ webpage, along with the slides and a summary document that includes all the questions and answers posed during the call. So you'll have access to all of that. And we'll send an email out to each faculty advisor and team lead, letting them know when it's published on the website. And as you're working towards your proposal and have any questions, please feel free to contact us at that email, the blue skies at nianet.org. Oh, do we have another question, Aiden? You can go ahead.
We see your mic is unmuted, Aiden, but we can't hear anything. I think we might be having some technical difficulties. So can I encourage you to go ahead and drop your comment or your question into the chat? From the chat, Aiden asks, does the MITRE Corporation fall under the criteria of a government agency that we cannot contact? Technically?
I would be wary of FFRDCs or FFRDC operators, which I believe MITRE is funded by the federal dollars in that way. So I would be wary of emailing MITRE, maybe. Although I mean, I would say we haven't planned on bringing anyone from MITRE into this activity. Stacy, what were you going to say?
I was just going to ask if you could expound on that acronym for those who might not know what that
so
is.
FFRDC are, let me make sure I I get it right. So FFRDCs are what are considered federally funded research and development centers, right? Things like JPL, national laboratories, a couple of Defense Department related specific things, bigger, some companies like MITRE, Aerospace Corporation, things like that sometimes also are included. So it can be a little dicey. I see a few more questions in the chat if we're moving on to another one. The first one is from Todd. Just from previous Blue Sky competitions, what are some common weaknesses you've seen in proposals? Let's see if I can think of some off the top of my mind. I think we've mentioned a few of them, right? Some people take their proposal page space talking just a little bit about so many things, and so they don't really have time to talk about any particular solution in depth. So that's definitely a weakness. Gosh, Amy, Stacy, if you think of any, feel free to chime in. I know, make sure you do your research. Sometimes we'll see students being like, oh, we're proposing this and it's so novel, and we do a quick Google and we're like, it's kind of already out there. And so that things like that will be kind of something that would make your innovation score, which is super important to getting into the finals. That would maybe suffer if you say I'm proposing this thing and it's kind of already a thing. So definitely do your research, right? Make sure you see what's out there, what's not out there, and definitely take a look into that.
And I think just kind of reiterating on some of the other things that you had mentioned earlier, Stephen, one is, that kitchen sink approach. Don't throw a whole bunch of potential ideas at us that you may be considering. Be clear in your proposal what you are considering. And again, that no AI magic. We have to be able to really justify why and how your concept will work. Mm-hmm. I think those are some of the biggest ones that we see over and over.
Yeah, I mean, so some kind of going a little bit more on that, right? So in some of the ones last year, and last year was really when we started seeing people kind of throw in that AI magic part. People, might say AI fixes this or AI identifies that, and some of our judges are like, they didn't talk anything about, the what language models exist for that. Is it something they're gonna have to do research on? Is there, how developed is it? There's a lot of, sometimes by throwing in buzzwords or things that might be popular out in the tech space, you end up having the judges, who are very technical people, raise a lot of questions. So be careful of throwing in those buzzwords. if you don't need to.
Good point.
Yeah, and I'll just add, like, on the non-technical side, just following the proposal formatting guidelines, just, you know, helps you look good right out the gate. Like, if you're submitting a proposal and you're already not following the guidelines, or not submitting a summary, and not doing the things that are clearly spelled out in the guidelines, then that doesn't necessarily set you up for success right out the gate. So
There was a finalist team last year that did, not last year, it was 2 years ago. And they actually created a checklist as part of their final, you know, submission. And it was for themselves mainly, to make sure that they had everything in their paper that were the things that we were asking for. And we thought that was a good idea, right? I mean, people do that in the engineering industry, right? Especially, you know, there's checklists on the maintenance industry. And so, you know, making sure you have everything that we're asking for is definitely a good idea. But I guess that was less of a weakness and more of a good thing. But maybe other teams just left things out, I guess, where that is, right? Where we're like, they didn't really go into this, they didn't go to that, and then they start losing points.
They went over tips and traps. That's good.
Yeah, there's another question. Says, I'm a faculty member and have a question regarding student selection. Are we allowed to select international students for this project?
So I'll answer that one as well.
Sure.
First, I want to direct everybody to, in the competition guidelines, there's a link to the participation agreement on page, I believe it's page 6 of the competition guidelines. And that participation agreement really outlines clearly who is eligible and who is not. There's a whole section on eligibility. There's a whole section on foreign citizens. And for this particular program, the minimum eligibility for a team is that there has to be at least 2 U.S. citizen students on the team who will be able to go to the forum and present if they are selected as a finalist. Because the forum is held at a NASA center, there's restrictions on foreign nationals being able to attend. So at least a minimum of 2 U.S. citizens have to be on the team. And then after that, you can have foreign national students participate on the team as long as they meet certain criteria. First, they have to be enrolled as a full-time student at your university in the United States, and they have to reside or live in the United States. So we don't allow students from foreign universities to participate, but if they are a foreign national or an international student that is living in your state, residing here full-time and taking full-time classes at your university, they can participate by helping to prepare the paper and the presentation and video. However, the chances are that they will very likely not be permitted to attend the on-site forum if your team was selected as a finalist. So it's something that we want to make sure that folks take into consideration. The other limiting factor for our international students is that they are not eligible for the prize in this particular challenge. So if your team were to win, any of the U.S. citizens that met the GPA and other criteria for an internship at NASA, they could participate in the prize by accepting an internship. However, NASA just does not provide internships for foreign or international students at this point.
Thanks, Stacy.
So a long answer to your question. And it looks like, can the team leader be an international student? And the answer is yes, as long as you still have 2 other U.S. citizen students.
And I do have a comment, because I know we might have a few faculty sponsors in here. And there's all sorts of ways that these teams come to be, right? Sometimes students look for faculty sponsors. Sometimes faculty sponsors get the info and try to get students' teams to come together. If you are a faculty sponsor and you are having a team for this, please, please, please let your student team come up with their concept and idea. We are not looking for faculty ideas for students to expound upon their faculty ideas. We really want student original ideas.
Actually, you know what, Stephen, that reminds me of another potential trap or weakness that we've seen in previous proposals. we have received some proposals that are very clearly an existing research project that the team tries to fit into our competition, even though it might not be a perfect fit because it's something that they've already been working on. And so we really encourage folks to make sure that whatever you propose is not like trying to put a square peg through a round hole, but that you're actually meeting the brief, following the theme and the design constraints and guidelines of this particular challenge. And then Aiden's hand is up, but I think that is from before. If I'm wrong, Aiden, feel free to drop your question into the chat. I'll go ahead and lower your hand for now. Any other questions? These have all been great questions.
Mm-hmm.
Going once. Going twice. All right, Amy, would you like to close us out? Thank you, everybody, for your attendance today.
Yeah, I think that's it. Again, I'd gone over all the wrap up stuff, but I mean, most importantly, if you have any questions throughout this process, please feel free to email us. I thought I saw a hand go up, but then it went down. So I think we're done with questions. But and then of course our next Q&A session is January 27th. That is an open call format. And then of course the proposal due date is February 16th. And then again, as I've said before, we will send out an email to all the team leads and advisors who submitted NOIs, letting them know when all of this, the information from this session, the recording, etc., will be posted on the website so they have that information. And I hope everybody has a great break from school with holidays and vacations coming up. So I hope everybody gets some well-needed rest. And we look forward to seeing your proposals and to hopefully talking to you again in January. So thanks again. Thanks everybody for joining.